Good afternoon. How are you? So, clearly, we seem to have an issue with the attendance for this event, but hopefully, we can make up the lack of quantity with very high quality. So, I need to leave in 15-20 minutes. So, what I would like to do is to share with you some thoughts that we as NASSCOM Haryana have been working on in terms of a vision for our city, vision for Gurgaon, and then perhaps we can have, it's okay, some discussion around it. So I'll try to take maybe 7-8 minutes, 10 minutes, and share the thinking, and then maybe we can have a Q&A for another 5 to 10 minutes. So NASSCOM, as you know, represents the IT and BPO industry, and this city, in many ways, is a product of this industry. The IT industry employs close to 3 lakh people in Gurgaon, and perhaps another 8 to 9 lakhs indirectly. So this industry is in many ways a very, very large part of this ecosystem. And it's not just the numbers. If you look at it, our average age in our industry is 27 to 30 years. So we give employment to a lot of young people. 35% of our employees are women. And overall, the contribution to the state, this industry contributes between 8 to 10% of the state GDP. It's a very large driver of this economy. And it's and clearly while the industry has contributed, it has also gained a lot from this ecosystem. As NASSCOM, over the last couple of years, we've been thinking about it. How do we really take the industry forward? And we realized that there is one kind of key issue we suffer from, or Gurgaon suffers from, is government apathy. And I think it is very visible even in this setting. If I understand right, I think this was meant to be an event with a lot of people from the government. I don't know how many have actually turned up, and that's a telling statement. It's a telling statement. It's an event which seems to be co-sponsored by a department of the government, and we don't really have anybody from the government really present here, or at least not too many. And I think that's something which we should put on the table right away. That it is an issue that Gurgaon faces. It's just like this foster child, who's like a golden goose that lays golden eggs. But nobody's really interested. At least the government is not interested. Doesn't seem to be interested in nurturing that golden goose. Anyway, let's not. I think it's a point to be made, but let's not crib too much about it. So as NASSCOM, we realize that we have to kind of, we have to have a vision. We have to have a concept, which will be a win-win. Which will be a win-win for the government. Which will be a win-win, for the city. Which will be a win-win for the industry. Because if we just come from our own perspective, we will never engage the government. If you're not able to engage the government, then there are some very fundamental issues, which will not get addressed. Okay, so over the last couple of years, we have gone through this process of engaging the government. We've understood their concerns, which are really about generating employment. Yeah, and second is broad-basing growth beyond Gurgaon. These are, when you talk to the government, those are really the two things that they talk about. So after a process, we have come up with a vision, which we feel can be a very powerful vision for Gurgaon. And it's a vision not just for the industry here, but can be a common vision for all of us. Whether we are citizens of Gurgaon, whether we are infrastructure developers, or whether we are part of the government. Yeah. And the vision that we are proposing is for Gurgaon to be bigger and better than Silicon Valley. bigger and better than Silicon Valley. Yeah, and you know what it means is that this becomes the preeminent destination for the ID BPO industry globally. Yeah, and I'll talk just in a minute about what are the various components of that vision. But let me just spend a minute on why we believe something powerful and something which is big and visionary is so very important. The first is that we can. This is we don't realize it that Gurgaon is already one of the largest centers for the ID BPO industry globally. It's not an India play. It is certainly one of the biggest centers in India, but globally it is one of the leading destinations. And I think that realization, I know how many of us have that realization. Yeah, that this is one of the global majors. Yeah. The second is that Gurgaon is still a young and relatively small city. This is geographically concentrated, and therefore it is easier to collaborate compared to a Mumbai or a Bangalore, which are a lot more spread out. And the third is, and I think the most unique factor about Gurgaon, that there is a tremendous, it's a young city, and therefore there is tremendous spirit in this city. There is a tremendous citizen kind of spirit of citizens contributing. My dear friend Prabhat is sitting here, and Prabhat is really quite a exceptional person for Gurgaon. And Prabhat has been very closely involved in putting in place the concept of Rahagiri Day. And just my professional career, this is I think one of the most wonderful things I've seen. Where citizens have come together and created something so nice, such a win-win, which is now rapidly getting replicated not just in Delhi but many other parts of India. Such a powerful thing. This happened in Gurgaon, and I think it's a very good reason why it happened in Gurgaon. And the reason is that there is a certain population here. It's a young city. It's a city which wants to contribute. The city has big problems, but the people in the city, whether it's the citizen groups, whether it's the industry, are not just cribbing about it. They're actually doing something. Yeah. So that's the first. So why this vision? Because we can. We're already very big. We're already a hub of the ID industry globally, and we can take it to a totally different level. And we have a community here, which can really drive things. But and there's a big but. Like most things in India, there are two sides to the story. Yeah, India is always a very complex, picture. It's never an easy one-sided picture. Yeah. So on one hand, we have tremendous opportunities. On the other hand, this city and the industry here, and I think the city overall, also faces some very big problems. The infrastructure in the city is pathetic. It is beyond pathetic. Yeah. Now, the state of the public transportation system or lack of it, I think, is very, everybody knows about it. Yeah. Now, what that has meant is that all of us, the 3 lakh employees in this industry and all the companies, we end up running our own fleet of vehicles. What that has meant is that there's a very significant cost that we incurred, from a transportation perspective, and then the real estate costs are also quite stupendous. Now, what that has meant is that Gurgaon has now become perhaps the costliest IP BPO destination in India. The average costs for Gurgaon are 10 to 15% higher than most other ID BPO hubs like Bangalore or Hyderabad. 10 to 15% higher. It's not a small number. And if you compare with the tier 2 centers that are coming up very rapidly, it's 25 to 30%. These are very big numbers. These are significant numbers. On top of that pollution, we talk about Beijing and Shanghai. The pollution levels in Gurgaon often match those levels. And if you go to Google now, if you have an Android phone, and look at what's the weather or the climate rating for Gurgaon, most times it will come as haze. Yeah. So we have a severe infrastructure issue. We have an issue around safety, especially around women's safety. Yeah. And a very large proportion of our workforce is women, and that's a problem for us. Now we have a fundamental problem around water. The water levels are depleting. civilizations are born and they die because of water. It's one of the hidden crises that we are not focused enough on, but in the long term, that's a very big issue. And then then finally, we when you come to the government kind of side, and I reference some of it, one of the fundamental problems is that there is a multiplicity of government agencies. There are so many government agencies that driving ownership of getting things done and that accountability, where you hold people kind of really, to task for something, that is very, very weak. Yeah. So this city, just to kind of bring it back, is at crossroads, my friends. Is at crossroads. There's a great opportunity for the city to really be a model in this country of what a modern, well-developed, inclusive development could look like. At the same time, there's a risk that this kind of city, which is, let's face it, this whole millennium city that we feel so proud of, largely driven by this IDPQ industry phenomena, could fizzle out because the fundamentals of it are becoming weak. Yeah, and that is why it is important to have a powerful vision, not a weak incremental approach. A powerful vision, which will take the city forward, which is becoming bigger and better than Silicon Valley. Now, what does that mean? How do we translate that slogan into something real? And we believe there are at least 3 areas on which we need to make progress. The first is making this a great city to live in and work in, and we'll talk a little more about it. Second is to make this a hub of innovation and entrepreneurship. See, any urban system, needs to have an economic engine. Without an economic engine, no urban system can prosper. Yeah, and this city has a good economic engine, but for it to go to a next level, it is not just the classic, let's do more, 100,000 more jobs at lower cost, and it has to be driven by innovation and entrepreneurship. That is the way we can leapfrog. Yeah? So hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, and that's a very different way of thinking. The third is for this to become a hub of world-class talent. We may employ 3 lakh professionals in the city, but only a small fraction of them are probably natives of Haryana and have come through the local education system here. Yeah? The quality of output from the local colleges is poor. Let's not mince words. The government believes that we are 80% there and there is some finishing school final touches which are required. It's the other way around. It's the other way around. Yeah. So there's a significant effort that needs to be done in terms of improving the quality of talent, and it's very important because any system to be truly world class needs to have a local source of quality talent and local high quality academic institutions, which is not the case today. Yeah. So those are the 3 kind of big dimensions of the vision: great city to live in and work in, a hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, hub of world-class talent. Now just quickly focusing on the first one, great city to live in and work in, which is I think what is a common factor here, which maybe impacts everybody. Yeah. So I think the first thing is on the infrastructure side, and Prabhat is a great kind of advocate of this, this whole concept of active commuting, where we are building a culture of walking, cycling, using public transportation. I think that's imperative. That's imperative. And to build that culture, there's an awareness building where all of us as citizens and industry groups have a responsibility. Government has a big role to play here in providing the right infrastructure. We've been talking about this infrastructure for some time, and that some time is number of years, and I think it is about time that we start seeing progress on that. Yeah. The second aspect is the aspect of women's safety, and I briefly mentioned that. The third is around water, and again I mentioned that earlier. And the fourth thing is the concept of an integrated development plan, master plan for Gurgaon. There is something that exists, but when was it made? What's the level of participation of that? What's the level of implementation of that? And I think there is an urgent need that plan, there's a relook at it, and I think a very important objective of that plan has to be that how do we develop the city so that we're able to reduce the cost of living. It's an extraordinarily high cost city to live in. Yeah, I moved from Delhi to Gurgaon a couple of years back, and my kind of monthly expenditure doubled. Yeah, and how many people, how many of our employees can really afford to buy houses in Gurgaon? what kind of an ecosystem are we creating? There is an urgent need to think about it so we are able to reduce the cost of living so it's a more inclusive development. So that's where I would I wanted to share with you some of the early thoughts around the vision. I think just to kind of make it practical, move forward, there are 3 or 4 things that we have been trying to engage with the government on, which we think are very important to very important actionables. So the first thing is that we have to figure out a single agency, a nodal agency, which has responsibility for infrastructure development. Single agency. Now, whether we are stepping up the MCG and for it to become really empowered, or whether there is a new Gurgaon Development Authority on the lines of the Noida Development Authority, I think that needs some debate. But I think the point is that there needs to be a single agency which has ownership for the infrastructure of this city. Yeah, that's I think the point number 1 that needs action. I think the point number 2 is that, again, infrastructure, that is the most visible aspect of the city. And on the infrastructure side, there is an urgent need on 3 different areas. The first is walking paths and cycling paths. We've been talking about it. We need to have real action behind nice kind of statements of intent. So that is number 1. Number 2 is the last mile connectivity, for the metro stations and for rapid metro. Yeah. And number 3 is to address road safety. Many of us are encouraging more walking, cycling, use of public transportation, but there's a sad reality, that the road safety and the number of fatal accidents that happen in a city is absolutely unacceptable. And you cannot really, when I kind of go out there and I'm trying to encourage, people to walk and cycle, I have half my mind, I'm not sure whether I'm doing the right thing, because there is such a high risk that you run with that. So those are 3 things, so the first is, a single agency which has responsibility, accountability for infrastructure. Then there are specific things that we need to do on the infrastructure side. And finally, what we are recommending is that, there is a committee or there is a group, that is set up, with participation, from the government, from industry bodies, citizen groups, developers, which really takes on, this task of developing a vision for Gurgaon and an action plan behind that. Yeah? This city needs a vision. What I shared with you is just an early thoughts. That needs a lot more discussion. That needs a lot more expert input. That needs a lot more analysis. But it is time that we do that. It is time that we do that. We have such a great opportunity with this city. This is a young city. We can do some very special things here. But if we keep on, just waiting, I think we'll miss the bus. Yeah. So I think we have an opportunity of creating something really special. And I think we have the right set of stakeholders. And it is not one body. If government thinks they can do it themselves, they're sadly mistaken. If NASSCOM or any of the industry bodies think they can do it themselves, they're in La La Land. And citizen groups, the developers, everybody has to come together. Yeah, and that is something which I think if we can make happen, develop a vision where people are buying into it, clear action plan. I think that could be a huge step forward. So friends, thank you. That's all I want to share.